Tonight we travel to a place where discipline is carved into the soul before the first rooster crows, where the scent of pine ink and cold stone mixes with the palpable dread of failure. We're stepping into the austere world of a Seodang, a Joseon Dynasty village school. For the next while, you're not just a listener, you're a student. A Seonbi in the making. And we're going to live through your day, from the jarring dark of pre-dawn to the exhausted dark of night. I'll warn you now, the romantic image of wise old masters and eager young scholars? We're leaving that at the door. This is a grueling, psychological marathon, and frankly, you probably won't survive this. The dropout rate, or more accurately, the beaten into farming rate, was staggeringly high. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your consciousness returns not to an alarm, but to a deep, bone-aching cold. It seeps through the thin ondal floor, the heated stones beneath having surrendered their warmth hours ago. The darkness is absolute, a thick velvet pressing against your eyes. Somewhere outside, a distant bell tolls, a wooden clapper struck against a metal bowl, its sound thin and insistent, slicing through the silence. That's your call. No gentle mother's hand here. You are, by law and custom, meant to be awake and studying before dawn. The rule isn't just tradition, it's a physical manifestation of the Confucian ideal, connecting the diligent scholar to the rising sun, the beginning of all things. You fumble in the dark. Your sleeping mat is a thin, rolled-up affair. Your blanket, little more than a heavily padded jacket. You slept in your inner clothes, a set of plain, white cotton sockgot. Because wasting time dressing is a luxury your discipline can't afford. The first ritual is folding your bedding with a military precision that would make a general nod. Every crease matters. Chaos begins in small things, your teacher would say. A sloppy fold leads to sloppy thoughts, sloppy calligraphy, a sloppy character. You can hear the other boys in the room now, the soft scuffle of feet on polished wood, a stifled cough, the rhythmic, shaky breath of someone already mentally reciting yesterday's passage. There's no talking. Conversation is for after the lessons, and even then, it's sparse and purposeful. You pull on your outer juramaji, a deep blue or gray robe that marks you as a student. The fabric is coarse, meant for durability, not comfort. It scratches against your neck, a constant, low-grade reminder of the austerity expected of you. You are here to transcend the needs of the body, after all. Hunger, cold, fatigue, these are distractions to be acknowledged and then masterfully ignored. You splash your face with water from a brass bowl. It's icy, shocking your system into something resembling alertness. In the dim light of a single, guttering oil lamp, a luxury your teacher provides, you see your reflection waver in the water's surface. A pale, serious face stares back, eyes shadowed from years of this routine. You look older than your years. Everyone here does. Historians still argue whether this pre-dawn regimen was a genius method for training focus in the day's freshest hours or a simple, brutal form of sleep deprivation designed to make pliable, obedient minds. Some desperate students, legend says, would tie their top knot to a ceiling beam to jerk themselves awake if they nodded off while studying alone at night. I'll let you decide if that's dedication or mild insanity. Your stomach groans, a hollow, empty sound. Breakfast is a distant dream, hours away. First, you must offer food to your mind. On a low desk sits your most precious possession, a stack of books. Not bound pages, but guapo, printed wood blocks on long, folded sheets of hanji paper. They feel fragile and immensely heavy with meaning all at once. You unroll a section of the 1,000-character classic, the foundational text for every Joseon child. You don't read it yet. You close your eyes and begin to recite, your voice a whisper in the still dark room. Heaven and earth, dark and yellow, the universe, vast and barren. The words are Chinese characters, their meaning only partially grasped at first, but their rhythm is everything. This memorization isn't about understanding, it's about engraving. Carving the patterns of sage wisdom directly onto the blank tablet of your soul before the world and its confusions can make their mark. As the first faint, gray light begins to bleed through the papered windows, you hear a different sound. Not a bell, but the unmistakable, slow, deliberate tread of leather-soled shoes on the wooden porch. The Seon is awake. The air in the room changes, tightening like a drawn bowstring. The soft recitations stop. All movement ceases. You finish your verse, place the text carefully back on the desk, and stand. Your day, a meticulously orchestrated performance of obedience and intellect, is about to begin in earnest. You take a deep breath, the last truly private breath you'll have for hours, and prepare to step out of the dormitory and into the relentless machinery of Confucian education. The wooden floorboards creak a protest under your feet as you join the silent line forming in the dormitory's main room. You don't walk, you shuffle, a constrained, forward motion where lifting your feet too high would be seen as unseemly energy, a lack of solemnity. You exit into a courtyard still held in the grip of a blue-gray twilight. The air is knife-cold and smells of damp earth, pine needles, and the distant, acrid hint of charcoal from the village hearths beginning to stir. Your destination is the main hall of the Seodang, a simple, elegant structure with a steep, curved roof that seems to hold up the fading stars. You don't look at the other boys. Eye contact is a form of communication, and communication is a distraction. You are a line of identical blue robes, moving like a single, multi-limbed creature towards its daily sacrament. You cross the threshold. The interior is dim, dominated by the deep, quiet scent of aged wood, dried ink, and a faint, lingering smokiness from the inkstones. At the far end of the room, on a slightly raised platform, sits your teacher's empty desk. It's austere, holding only an inkstone, a water dropper, a brush stand, and the dreaded disciplinary rod, a length of split bamboo that seems to gleam with a menace all its own. But your eyes, and every pair of eyes in the room, are drawn not to the desk, but to what hangs on the wall behind it. It's a wooden tablet, a young day, bearing the sacred characters of a Confucian sage. In more prestigious schools, it might be a tablet for Confucius himself or a great Korean scholar like Yi Huang. Here, it is likely the tablet of a revered local teacher or a foundational sage. This isn't decoration. It is the literal embodiment of the knowledge you are here to ingest, the silent, judging ancestor of all your endeavors. The line fractures into a precise choreography. You find your spot on the floor, on a thin, worn sitting mat. The arrangement is not random. The oldest, most advanced students are closest to the teacher's platform. The youngest and newest, like you perhaps, are at the back, near the door where the cold seeps in most aggressively. Your place in this geometry is a constant, humbling report card. You settle onto your knees, then sit back on your heels in the formal Caesar-style posture. The strain on your thighs and ankles is immediate and familiar, a dull bone that will build into a screaming ache over the next hour. Discomfort, you have been taught, is the first gatekeeper of learning. If you cannot master your own body's complaints, how can you hope to master the subtle complexities of statecraft or ethics? A hush falls, so complete you can hear the sputter of the oil lamp on the teacher's desk. Then, he enters. Seon doesn't merely walk in, he manifests. His robe is darker, of a finer but no less severe cut. His beard is trimmed to a sharp point. He carries no books. The texts are in his head, and soon, by relentless force, they must be in yours. He moves to the front of the room, his gaze passing over you like a physical weight, checking posture, dress, the direction of your eyes. Any flaw, a slouch, an untied ribbon, a wandering glance, is a crack in the foundation of the day. He says nothing. He turns to face the tablet. This is the moment. The morning rite. At a slight nod from the senior student, you all bow forward from your seated position, your foreheads touching the cool, polished wood of the floor. You hold the position. This isn't a quick nod. It is a full, profound prostration, a physical surrender of your ego to the vast river of tradition that flows from that wooden tablet. You are nothing. The way is everything. You rise. The senior student intones a short, formal greeting to the teacher on behalf of the group. The teacher gives a minimal, acknowledging nod. Then, you bow again, this time to the teacher himself. A slightly lesser bow, but no less charged with meaning. In this gesture, you pledge your obedience, your diligence, your very mind to his stewardship for the day. He accepts it as his due. The mainstream historical fact here is profound. This ceremony, repeated daily, physically reinforced the core Joseon hierarchy. The king bowed to heaven and the ancestors, the people bowed to the king, the student bowed to the teacher and the sages. It was a living diagram of a stable universe. Only after this silent exchange of power and obligation does the real work begin. The teacher takes his seat. He does not call the roll. Your presence is mandatory, your absence a grave offense against your family as much as the school. He simply looks at the senior student and utters the first two characters of the text you are to recite. And like a stone dropped into a still pond, the ritual ripples out. The senior student recites a line in a loud, clear, monotone chant. Then the next student, and the next, down the line. The sound is hypnotic, a droning wave of ancient Chinese syllables. Your mind scrambles to the text you whispered in the dark. Your turn approaches. Your throat is dry. This is your first test, a public performance of memorization. To hesitate is to falter. To forget is to invite a silent, searing disappointment that feels worse than any rod. You draw a breath, and add your voice to the chant, a single thread in the fabric of recitation that weaves the room together, binding you all to the text, to the teacher, and to the relentless, unchanging routine of the day now formally, irrevocably, begun. The chant is not a recitation, it's a storm. What began as a formal ripple has built into a thunderous, rhythmic cascade of sound that fills the wooden hall and pushes against the papered windows. You are no longer speaking words. You are an instrument, a pipe through which the wisdom of 1,000 years is being blown. The master said, "To learn and at due times to repeat what one has learnt, is that not after all a pleasure?" The irony of chanting about pleasure in this atmosphere of intense pressure is entirely lost on you. There is no pleasure here. There is only the doing. Your voice is one among 20, but you dare not let it waver or drop. The teacher's ear is famously acute, able to pick out a single faltering voice from the chorus, like a shepherd hearing the one lame sheep in the flock. This is the reading session, the songdak. You are not learning what the words mean. Not yet. Meaning is a luxury for later, for the advanced students who have already cemented the texts in their minds like pillars of stone. For you, the priority is raw, unthinking memorization. The method is brute force repetition. The teacher chants a line in a specific, traditional melodic pattern. You and your classmates echo it back, not once, but 3, 4, 5 times, until the tonal contours are etched into your muscle memory. Your jaw aches. Your throat feels raw. The sound is so loud it vibrates in your chest, making your heart thump in time with the classical rhythm. Historians still argue whether this deafening, collective recitation was primarily a mnemonic device or a social one, forging a group identity through shared sonic suffering, beating individual thought into a unified, harmonious whole. You glance. just for a sliver of a second, at the text unrolled on the low desk before you. The Chinese characters stare back, black and imposing on the off-white hanji. You are not supposed to be reading them now. You are supposed to be performing them from memory. The visual is a crutch, a shameful secret. The goal is to internalize the text so completely that you could recite it backwards in your sleep while being poked with sticks. Some educational manuals actually advised students to eat the words. Not literally, of course, but to visualize swallowing the characters to make them a permanent part of your physical being. Others suggested reading by the light of a glowing sack of fireflies if you couldn't afford lamp oil, turning study into a faintly magical, if terribly impractical, nightly ritual. The text today is from the Analects, but it could just as easily be the Mencius or the Book of Documents. The specific content matters less than the act of absorption. The sound, the rhythm, the physical act of forming the sounds with your mouth. This is the alchemy. You are quite literally shaping your mind. Confucian philosophy held that proper ritual, li, reshaped a person's inner nature. This deafening chant is the ritual of learning. By forcing your body and voice into the precise, repetitive mold of the sage's words, the theory goes, your chaotic, childish mind will eventually conform to its pattern. Virtue becomes a kind of muscle memory. Your focus breaks for a moment as the boy next to you, young Kim, stumbles over a difficult four-character phrase. He repeats it, wrong again, his voice fraying with panic. The collective chant wavers. The teacher does not look up from his own text. He doesn't need to. He simply raises his left hand, fingers still holding his book, and makes a small, sharp cutting motion with his right. The senior student, ever vigilant, is already moving. He doesn't speak. He walks over, takes young Kim's wooden reading tablet, the gakpei with today's passage written on it, and holds it up directly in front of the boy's face, an inch from his nose. The message is clear. Look. See the characters. Now, say them. The chanting continues around them, a river flowing past a stuck stone. Young Kim, tears of shame and frustration welling in his eyes, takes a shuddering breath and rejoins the chorus, his voice small and broken. The senior student returns to his place. The lesson, in both literature and humility, is complete. The mainstream fact here is the absolute centrality of memorization. The entire 8-year curriculum for the civil service exams was based on recalling and flawlessly reproducing over 400,000 characters from the core Confucian classics. This morning chant is the forge where that impossible feat begins, one thunderous, mind-numbing line at a time. The session ends not with a bell, but with a sudden, ringing silence. The teacher closes his book with a soft, definitive thud. The absence of sound is almost louder than the chant was. Your ears ring. Your head throbs with the ghost rhythm of the words. Your body sags slightly, the adrenaline of performance seeping away. But there is no relief. The silence is just a different kind of pressure. It is the space where the next test will be born. You look at the characters on your desk, still swimming slightly in your vision. You have poured them into your ears and out of your mouth. Now, you must prove they have taken root. You must be ready to give them back, individually, on command. The memory of the bamboo rod on the teacher's desk flashes in your mind. The chanting was the warm-up. The examination is next. The silence after the chant is thick, heavy, pregnant with a dread so familiar it has its own taste, like cold copper on the back of your tongue. The teacher's eyes, which had been half-lidded in contemplation of the text, now sweep across the room, sharp and assessing. This is the transition, the moment the collective becomes the individual. The safety of the chorus is stripped away. You are a single stalk of grain before the scythe. This is the mundap, the daily oral examination. It is not a test of understanding, but of pure, flawless regurgitation. A single character out of place, a moment's hesitation, and the delicate, invisible edifice of your day, and your standing, cracks. He does not call names from a list. His gaze is the summons. It lands on a student in the middle row, a boy named Park who has been struggling with the newer texts. Park, the teacher's voice is flat, devoid of warmth or cruelty. It simply is, like the sound of a stone dropping. Book of Odes. Guanju. From the beginning. Park swallows audibly. He shifts on his knees, his robes rustling in the quiet. He begins, his voice a reedy thread compared to the earlier thunder. Guan guan cry the ospreys, on the islet in the river. He gets through the first 4 lines well enough, the rhythm ingrained. But on the 5th, he hits a snag, a character cluster about the modest, retiring, virtuous young lady. His mind blanks. The word for retiring, deserts him. He stammers. Repeats the previous phrase. The silence in the room is now absolute, a vacuum sucking at everyone's composure. You stare at the grain of the wood in your own desk, your own heart hammering a sympathetic rhythm against your ribs. You know the line. You whisper it in your head, screaming it mentally at him. But to speak it aloud would be the greatest betrayal, an insult to Park and the teacher. The teacher lets the silence stretch. It's a tactical silence, a tool. It amplifies the error, makes it echo in the hollow of Park's skull. Finally, the teacher speaks. Your mind is a flooded river, he says, his tone almost conversational. Muddy, chaotic, unable to hold a clear reflection. You have looked at the words, but you have not received them. He nods, almost imperceptibly, to the senior student. This is the procedure. There is no yelling. No dramatic fury. The punishment is as ritualized as the bowing. Park knows what to do. His face, pale as Hanji, sets into a mask of resignation. He slowly, stiffly, rises from his seated position, turns, and walks on trembling legs to the front of the room, near the teacher's platform. He lowers himself to his knees again, then bends forward, pressing his upper body down until his forehead rests on the cool floor, presenting his backside and the calves of his legs, covered by thin cotton trousers, as the target. The senior student fetches the rod. The split bamboo makes a faint, swishing sound as he lifts it. He is not the teacher, he is an instrument of the classroom's law. The teacher gives the count. For the muddy mind. 1. The rod comes down with a crisp, sickening thwack that seems to vibrate in the floorboards. Park's body jerks, but he makes no sound. A good student takes his punishment in silence. For the wasted oil of the lamp you studied by. 2. Thwack. A sharp intake of breath, tightly controlled. For the disrespect to the odes, which mirror the order of heaven and earth. 3. Thwack. This one is harder. A small, choked gasp escapes Park's lips. It is done. The senior student replaces the rod. Park, moving with exquisite slowness born of pain and shame, pushes himself up. His eyes are glistening, but no tears fall. He bows stiffly to the teacher, who gives a single nod of receipt. The debt is paid, the slate wiped clean, and then Park shuffles back to his place, settling onto his bruised calves with a barely perceptible wince. The lesson for everyone is delivered with more efficiency than any lecture. Knowledge is a physical contract. Failure has a tangible, immediate cost. Historians still argue whether this pervasive corporal punishment was seen as a necessary, corrective medicine for laziness or simply the unchecked tyranny of the teacher's authority, a dark thread in the fabric of Confucian pedagogy. The mainstream fact is that it was utterly normalized, codified in school rules. The number of strikes corresponded to the severity of the error: forgetting a text, poor calligraphy, tardiness, disrespect. The rod was as much a part of the classroom furniture as the inkstone. Some desperate students were known to secretly line their trousers with extra layers of paper or thin wooden slips, a futile attempt at armor against the bamboo's bite, a tiny rebellion against the unbearable economy of pain and knowledge. The teacher's gaze moves on. It passes over you, for now, and lands on another. The questioning continues. Each correct recitation is met with silent approval, the lack of punishment. That is your reward. There is no good job, no praise. The absence of pain is the praise. You sit in your own private agony of anticipation, the passages you know perfectly just moments ago now feeling slippery and alien in your memory. You run through them internally, over and over, a frantic, silent prayer. You feel the ghost ache in your own calves. You watch Park's shoulders, held too stiffly, and know that tonight, when the robes come off, dark, parallel welts will cross his skin, a temporary tattoo of failure. This is the daily calculus. You are not storing knowledge for future use. You are presenting it for daily audit, where the currency is your own flesh, and the bank is eternally, ruthlessly open. The air in the hall, still tense from the sharp punctuation of the rod, slowly shifts. The focus of dread moves from the tongue to the hand. The oral exam concludes not with a summary, but with a silent, collective exhalation as the teacher's scrutiny turns from faces to the tools on your desk. The morning's thunder of sound is over. Now begins the afternoon's realm of absolute silence and minute, visible precision, calligraphy, or seoi. This isn't an art class. It's a moral diagnostic. As the Confucian saying went, see a man's writing, know his heart. Your character is about to be judged, stroke by stroke. You prepare your tools with a reverence bordering on the religious. First, the inkstone, the yunjiok, a heavy slab of polished slate. You take the slender water dropper, a hollow bamboo tube, and release a few careful drops into the grinding well. Too much water makes the ink wan and cowardly, too little makes it stubborn and blotchy. Then, the ink stick itself, a solid bar of pine soot and animal glue, often stamped with elegant characters from the maker's studio. You pick it up. It feels cool and dense. You set it upright in the water and begin to grind, moving it in slow, unwavering, concentric circles. This is the first meditation. The rhythm is everything. Fast, jagged circles produce coarse, grainy ink, the mark of an impatient, inferior mind. Slow, consistent, clockwise circles produce ink of a deep, luminous black, smooth as a moonless night. The faint, rhythmic shush-shush of 24 ink sticks on stone is the only sound in the room, a whispering prelude to creation. The highest quality ink was said to be made from the soot of old pine trees that had been struck by lightning, the inherent chi of the storm captured in the black pigment. Your ink stick is humble, but the principle remains: you are grinding potential into existence. Once the ink achieves the perfect, glossy viscosity, a judgment you make by dipping the tip of your brush and watching how it pulls a single, perfect droplet, you turn to the paper. Hanji, made from the inner bark of mulberry trees, is tough, fibrous, and subtly textured. It drinks the ink, but on its own terms. You place a small, heavy paperweight, maybe a smooth river stone, on one corner to hold it flat. Your brush, the pilt, is your soul's proxy. You selected it with care, a bamboo handle, and a tip made from the soft, resilient hairs of a weasel or rabbit, bound with silk thread. You test its spring against your palm. A good brush should have a spirit, a willingness to obey the subtlest intention of your wrist. You align it perfectly vertical to the paper, just so, on the ceramic brush rest. The teacher announces the practice characters for the day. Not a philosophical phrase, but fundamental building blocks. Young, meaning eternity or permanence, or Wang, king. These characters are chosen because they contain, in 8 or 4 strokes respectively, every major stroke type in Chinese calligraphy: the dot, the horizontal, the vertical, the hook, the rising stroke. To write beautifully is to demonstrate mastery of the universe of the brush. You have written it 10,000 times. You will write it 10,000 more. You close your eyes for a second, visualizing the character in the negative space behind your eyelids. You see not just the black lines, but the white spaces they create, the balance, the proportion. Calligraphy is as much about the void as the substance. You dip the brush. You let the excess ink drain along the edge of the inkstone until the tip is sharp, poised. You bring it to the paper. Your entire arm is involved, suspended from the shoulder, your wrist rigid, your fingers guiding but not gripping. The first stroke of is the powerful, downward left dot. You press, twist slightly to give it a rounded shoulder, and lift with a swift, clean motion, leaving a tail that hints at the next stroke. The ink soaks into the hanji, blooming slightly along the fibers. A perfect dot should look like a falling rock, or a hawk's eye. Yours is acceptable. You breathe, reset. The next stroke, the long horizontal. This is the test of steady courage. You anchor the brush, pull it smoothly and evenly from left to right, applying consistent pressure, finishing with a slight downward press and lift to square the end. Any tremor, any waver, reveals a trembling spirit. The mainstream historical fact here is that calligraphy was one of the 6 core arts a Confucian gentleman was required to master, and it was a decisive section in the civil service exams. A brilliant mind with ugly, chaotic handwriting would simply not pass. The state needed orderly minds. An order began with the line on the page. You complete the character. It sits there, black on white. You critique it mercilessly. The vertical stroke is a hair too weak, suggesting indecision. The final hook lacks the necessary explosive energy. It is a portrait of your current self, adequate, striving, imperfect. You glance, furtively, at the senior student's paper. His is breathtaking, balanced, powerful, each stroke alive with controlled force. It hums with quiet authority. It is a goal, a reproach, and an inspiration all at once. Historians still argue whether this obsessive, lifelong pursuit of perfect brushwork genuinely cultivated moral refinement or simply produced generations of excellent copyists, brilliant at replicating form but perhaps less so at original thought. You prepare to write it again. And again. This is the grind. This is where the mind, exhausted from memorization and terrorized by the rod, must find a deep, quiet pool of focus. A single blot, a ruined stroke, means not the bamboo, but something almost worse: the silent, crushing disappointment as you present the flawed sheet. It means starting over on fresh paper, a waste of precious resources. It means your hand, your very heart, was not equal to the task that day. You dip your brush once more, the smell of pine soot and water filling your senses. The world narrows to the point of the brush, the texture of the paper, the infinite possibility and peril of the next, perfect stroke. As your brush moves in its silent, repetitive dance, your eyes are not solely on your own paper. In the profound quiet of calligraphy practice, the unspoken architecture of the room becomes palpable. You are not just a student, you are a coordinate in a strict, invisible grid of social calculus. This is the unseen hierarchy, the living map of Joseon's Yangban class system reproduced in microcosm on these worn floorboards. Where you sit, how the teacher addresses you, even the frequency of the rod's attention, all of it is dictated by a silent, brutal ledger of family, wealth, and perceived potential. The senior student, the one who wielded the rod, sits in the premier position, front row, center, directly in the axis of the teacher's gaze. He is likely the son of a local official, His family's Jokbo genealogy scroll long and distinguished. His robe, you've noticed, is of a slightly finer weave, his inkstone a dark, prized slate from a famous quarry. When he speaks to the teacher, it is with a measured confidence that borders on, but never crosses into, familiarity. He is not just the top student academically, he is the classroom's ordained prefect, a junior enforcer of the order that benefits him most. His success is the school's success, and thus, he is nurtured. Your own place, several mats back and to the left, tells its own story. Your father is a minor scholar or a struggling young man without a post, your family's fortunes hanging on the thread of your eventual exam success. Your position is provisional. You are there on merit, perhaps. You showed a glimmer of memorization skill, but also on sufferance. A boy to your right, however, is an outlier. His name is Minute, and he is the son of a wealthy Chunjin merchant, a technical middle class. His family has donated a significant sum to the school's roof repairs. He sits closer to the front than his recitation skills warrant. The teacher calls on him less often, corrects him with a fraction more patience. It is a quiet, shameful transaction everyone understands. Coin can purchase a slight buffer against humiliation, a little more time to learn. But it cannot purchase true respect. Minute will never be senior student, no matter his donations. The bloodline barrier is absolute. Then there are the boys at the very back, near the drafty door. The sons of poorer yangban or perhaps even ambitious commoners who have scraped together the tuition. They are the ghosts of the classroom. The teacher's gaze often sweeps over them as if they are part of the wall. They are called upon only when a glaring error in the chorus needs public correction, made examples of to reinforce the natural order. Their strokes in calligraphy are judged more harshly, their mistakes deemed inherent, a lack of the refined chi possessed by the better born. Some manuals advise teachers to assess a new student's potential not by a test, but by observing his demeanor and dress upon arrival, and to place him accordingly. The hierarchy was assumed, not earned. This geography governs everything. When the senior student needs his inkstone refilled with water, it is a boy from the back who silently scurries to fetch it. When a text needs to be passed, it moves from the front to the back, never the reverse. During breaks, the boys cluster in their ordained zones, the elite few around the senior student discussing classical allusions, the middle group practicing recitation, the backbenchers simply trying to stay warm and unnoticed. You exist in the anxious middle, looking with yearning at the front and with a nervous, unacknowledged superiority toward the back. Your goal is not to rise to the top, that is likely preordained, but to solidify your place in the middle, to not slip backward into the obscurity of the door. Historians still argue whether this classroom mirroring of society was a pragmatic preparation for the real world's inequities or a deeply corrosive force that stifled meritocracy, ensuring that the state's bureaucracy was run by a closed loop of the well-born. The mainstream fact is that the civil service exams, for all their theoretical openness, were overwhelmingly dominated by the Yangban class. They had the resources for years of study, the family libraries, the connections to prestigious tutors. The Seodang was where this advantage was first institutionalized, where you learned your place in the cosmos before you even understood the cosmos itself. You finish your row of characters and lay your brush down. Your wrist aches. You look at Minute, the merchant's son, who is carefully examining his own work. You feel a confusing twist of resentment and pity. He has a cushion you lack, but he also has a ceiling you do not. Then you glance at the senior student, who is not practicing basic characters but composing a short poem, his brush flying with graceful assurance. A cold, clear truth settles in your gut. The lesson of the texts is about virtue accessible to all. The lesson of the classroom seating chart is about power, access, and blood. Your daily struggle is not just against the difficult texts and the ever-present rod. It is against this invisible map, trying to etch your name onto a spot that the world has already largely decided is not yours to claim. The silence of calligraphy is finally broken not by a voice, but by a different, deeper bodily awareness. A hollow, gurgling insistence from your stomach. The single bowl of rice porridge you force down in the dark blue of dawn is a distant memory. Your energy, poured into chanting and brushwork, has been spent, and the craving for replenishment is a sharp, distracting pain. But here, even the simple act of eating is not a respite. It is another lesson, another ritual designed to forge the superior man. Lunch is not a meal. It is an exercise in austerity, a direct attack on the concept of pleasure. The signal comes not as a bell, but as the teacher closing his own book with a soft, definitive snap. He stands and, without a word, walks to a small side door that leads to his private quarters. His exit is your permission. The senior student rises and you all follow suit, your stiff legs protesting after hours on the floor. There is no rush, no clamor. You file out of the main hall, not toward a dining room, but back into the courtyard, now bathed in the pale midday light. In a covered, open-sided pavilion, simple wooden trays have been laid out in neat rows. The fare is as unchanging as the curriculum. A bowl of borabap, mixed grain rice, mostly barley and millet with a few precious grains of white rice. A small dish of kimchi, a few strips of dried fish or gyatgul fermented shrimp paste for protein, and a cup of cold water. The smell is sharp, salty, and functional. You take your tray and return not to the hall, but to find a spot in the courtyard or on the porch. You do not sit in groups for camaraderie. You sit alone or in pairs facing away from each other. Conversation is strongly discouraged. This is a time for contemplation, for reviewing the morning's texts in your mind while you fuel the body. The rule is explicit. Eat to live, do not live to eat. The taste is secondary. The texture, the chewiness of the barley, the fiery crunch of the kimchi, is a reminder of simplicity, of the farmer's toil that provides it. You are to eat with gratitude for the sustenance, and with shame that your scholarly pursuits render you unable to produce it yourself. You pick up your brass spoons and chopsticks. The first bite is a shock of cold, sour kimchi juice. It wakes your tired mouth. You follow it with a clump of the multigrain rice. It is dense, dry, and requires work to swallow. This is the point. Comfort is the enemy of vigilance. A full, satisfied belly leads to Huan. Leisure, laziness, a slackening of the moral fiber. You eat slowly, methodically. You must finish everything in the bowl. Wasting a single grain, a shred of fermented cabbage, is a profound moral failing, an insult to heaven, earth, and the farmer. You watch as young Kim, still moving stiffly from his caning, struggles to eat. Each slight shift on the hard ground must send a jolt through his bruised calves. He eats through the pain, his face a mask of concentration. There is no special meal for the punished, no comfort offered. His suffering is his own to manage, another ingredient in his lunch. Historians still argue whether this enforced culinary asceticism was a genuine spiritual discipline that built character or a convenient justification for the simple fact that most village schools and families were poor, and this was all they could afford. The mainstream fact is that the ideal of the scholar, the Sionbai, was inextricably linked with frugality and indifference to material comfort. Luxurious food was for corrupt officials, not virtuous students. Some extreme educational guides suggested that if a student found himself enjoying his meal too much, he should deliberately think of something bitter or distasteful, like the taste of medicine or the smell of the latrine, to counteract the pleasure and return his mind to a proper state of neutral discipline. Imagine that. Sitting in the sun, forcing down bland barley while actively conjuring the scent of a toilet to keep your virtue intact. It's a level of anti-hedonism that's almost artistic. You finish your last grain of rice, using a piece of kimchi to wipe the bowl clean. You sip the cold water. It does not quench a thirst so much as it announces the meal's end. There is no dessert, no sweet treat. Sweetness is for children, and you ceased being a child the day you entered the siadang. You look at your empty tray. The hunger has been quieted but not satisfied. A low, persistent hum remains. This, you are meant to understand, is the ideal state. A body just fueled enough to continue its work, but never so content that it would choose rest over study. The mind should be the master, the stomach a barely noticed servant. You rise, take your tray to a large basin for washing and place it neatly in a stack. The entire process has taken perhaps 20 minutes. There is no lounging, no post-meal stupor. The break is over. The teacher will re-enter the hall shortly. The afternoon session, a shift from the foundational arts to the applied sciences of ethics and order, is about to begin. You carry the faint, sour tang of kimchi on your breath and the familiar hollow feeling in your gut back to your mat, where the world of abstract principles and rigid geometry awaits. The faint, earthy aftertaste of barley still on your tongue, you settle back onto your mat. The post-lunch session brings a subtle shift in the intellectual weather. The raw memorization and physical discipline of the morning give way to something more structured, more analytical. This is where the seeds planted by rote recitation are supposed to sprout into understanding. The topic is mathematics, not as an abstract science, but as sanchab, the practical geometry of a righteous world. Your teacher unrolls a different kind of text, the Joseon Sanhak, a mathematical manual. He does not speak of numbers for their own beauty. He speaks of them as the hidden skeleton of a well-run state. A field, he begins, his voice taking on the cadence of a planner, not a poet. A field belonging to 3 brothers must be divided upon the father's death. It is not a perfect square, but a trapezoid. The eldest brother, by right of primogeniture, receives the largest portion. The second brother, the next. The youngest, the remainder. Calculate the divisions so that each portion is proportional to their status, yet the land remains fertile and manageable. He sketches the rough shape in the air with his finger. The problem is not just arithmetic. It is a miniature drama of inheritance law, family hierarchy, and agricultural reality. You are not learning to calculate area. You are learning to impose Confucian order upon the irregular earth. You take up your counting rods, small, identical sticks of bamboo or wood, and begin arranging them on your low table, creating a physical grid to represent the field. The huan, the concept of a circular, heavenly principle, must be squared with the messy lines of human possession. This is the practical learning or silhak influence that seeped into later Joseon education. The world cannot run on poetry alone. Taxes must be calculated, grain stores measured, public works projects planned. Your mind, trained to hold classical phrases in perfect order, must now bend to the logic of proportions and volumes. You move the rods, your brow furrowed. A mistake here won't lead to a caning, probably, but to a different kind of scorn, the scorn for impracticality. A scholar who cannot fairly divide a field is of no use to his village or his king. The mainstream historical fact is that mathematics was a core part of the lower-tier civil service exams for technical positions, crucial for the bureaucrats who actually made the kingdom function day to day. After the mathematics, the focus softens, but deepens. The teacher puts away the rods and returns to the classics, but now with a different lens. He selects a passage from the Book of Songs, the Shijing. It is a simple poem about peasants clearing land, their synchronized movements and grunts of effort. Read not just the words, the teacher instructs, read the harmony. The rhythm of their axes mirrors the rhythm of the seasons. Their shade labor is the foundation of the village. which is the foundation of the province, which is the foundation of the kingdom. This is the geometry of ethics. Poetry is no longer just sonic memorization, it is a blueprint for social cohesion. The imagery of the natural world, the bending bamboo, the flowing river, the nested geese, are all models for human relationships. The father is the sky, the son the supported earth. The ruler is the North Star, the ministers the circling constellations. Historians still argue whether this applied, metaphorical teaching successfully created more competent, ethical officials or simply dressed up a rigid social control system in elegant, classical clothing. Was it about building a better world, or just better justifying the existing one? You listen, trying to connect the trapezoidal field from the math lesson to the harmonious peasants in the poem. Both are about proper division, proper roles, proper balance. The state is a giant machine, and you are being taught to be a perfectly calibrated cog, understanding both your practical function and your philosophical reason for being. Some scholars believe that the very angles and shapes used in architectural layouts of palaces and tombs, all based on complex geometric and numerological principles, directly influence the harmony of the state. A poorly calculated roof angle could, in theory, lead to poor harvests or rebellious ministers. The pressure of your math lesson just took on a cosmic, if absurd, weight. The afternoon sun slants through the paper windows, casting long, precise rectangles of light onto the floor. The dust motes dance in the beams, a chaotic contrast to the ordered principles being discussed. You feel a different kind of mental fatigue setting in. It's not the exhaustion of screaming recitation or the nerve-wracking focus of calligraphy. It's the fatigue of constant, forced synthesis. Every lesson, whether numbers or poems, is a brick in the same wall. You are not collecting disparate subjects. You are being shown a single, monolithic truth from a dozen different angles. It is intellectually suffocating and strangely awe-inspiring at the same time. The world, in this view, is not chaotic. It is a vast, interlocking puzzle of moral and practical geometry, and your entire education is a decade-long tutorial on how to fit your one, small piece into the grand, pre-drawn design. The trapezoidal field, the peasant's song, the stroke of your brush, they are all the same lesson, repeated until it becomes the only reality you can perceive. Your eyes, following the teacher's moving hands as he diagrams a poetic metaphor in the air, catch a detail you've seen but never truly seen. A faint, persistent tremor in his fingers. It's most noticeable when he lifts his teacup, a simple ceramic bowl, during a rare pause. The surface of the liquid shivers, creating tiny, frantic ripples. He is not old, but he looks aged beyond his years. Deep lines bracket his mouth, not from laughter, but from the perpetual, stone compression of his lips. His shoulders are set in a permanent, forward-leaning curve, the weight of expectation bending his spine. In this moment of afternoon quiet, you are not looking at your master. You are looking at a man under a pressure so immense it has become a physical part of him. His reputation, his livelihood, his very standing in the Confucian world, all of it is tied to your performance, and the performance of every boy in this room. He is not a tenured professor. He is a contractor of minds. His school's survival depends on his ability to produce results. Students who pass the local preliminary exams, who bring honor and future donations to the village. A teacher whose students consistently fail is a tree that bears no fruit. He is quietly abandoned, left to wither into disgrace. The gifts of food and cloth from your families are not mere tuition. They are his salary, and their quality is a direct commentary on his perceived effectiveness. That basket of decent rice from the senior student's father? A vote of confidence. The scraggier chicken from a struggling family in the back row? A plea, and a quiet warning. This pressure explains everything. The relentless drilling, the immediate punishment, the lack of warmth. It is not born of innate cruelty, but of a desperate, focused efficiency. He has no time to coddle, to explore individual learning styles. The civil service exam is a vast, standardized beast, and he has a limited number of years to force-feed you the precise knowledge and discipline needed to survive its maw. Every moment of compassion is, in his calculus, a moment of valuable training lost. The rod is not just a tool of discipline, it is a time-saving device. Pain is a faster teacher than patience. Historians still argue whether this system created dedicated, self-sacrificing mentors or merely turned them into anxious, sometimes brutal, taskmasters more concerned with their own survival than their students' holistic development. You watch him grade a stack of calligraphy from the morning. His critiques are razor-sharp, written in succinct, brutal characters in the margin. Weak. Sloppy. Unfocused. No praise. When he finds a good one, likely the senior students, he merely gives a single, slow nod and sets it aside. That nod is the summit of his approval. You realize his famed acute ear during recitation isn't just a skill, it's a hypervigilance, born of listening for the one flaw that could indicate a foundational weakness he must ruthlessly correct. His entire being is tuned to the detection and eradication of error. Some private journals of teachers reveal they often suffered from chronic insomnia, lying awake running through student weaknesses and lesson plans, or suffered from what we'd now call stress-induced digestive ailments. The master's poise is a performance. Beneath the robe, he is a knot of anxiety. His gaze meets yours for a fleeting second. There is no warmth in it, but you see something new, a profound, weary calculation. He is assessing your progress, estimating your odds, deciding how much of his finite energy and hope to invest in you. You are not a child to him. You are a project, an asset, a potential line in his own professional ledger. Your success is his success. Your failure is a personal and professional rebuke to his methods. This is why he pushes Minute, the merchant's son, a little gentler. Min's failure would mean the loss of a wealthy patron. It's a cold equation. This is why he was so harsh with young Kim this morning. Kim's repeated stumbles are a threat to the classroom's overall standard, a weed that must be uprooted before it spreads. The mainstream fact is that village teachers were often low-ranking Yangban or educated commoners themselves, for whom teaching was one of the few respectable professions available. It was a life of modest means and immense stress, trapped between the expectations of parents and the rigid demands of the state examination system. He is not a free scholar contemplating the heavens. He is a foreman on an intellectual assembly line, and the quality of his product is inspected every few years in the most public and consequential way imaginable. The tremor in his hand is the vibration of that assembly line, running day and night in his soul. You look down at your own hands, smudged with ink, and feel a strange, new weight settle upon you. Your struggle is not yours alone. You are carrying his hopes, his fears, his very rice bowl on your narrow, young shoulders. The bamboo rod, you now understand, is as much an instrument of his own desperation as it is of your discipline. The teacher's focused gaze is a lighthouse beam, sweeping the room. But in the shadows between its passes, a different, secret world thrives. This is the covert ecosystem of the students, a world of silent signals, hidden alliances, and desperate betrayals. It's a survival network operating beneath the official doctrine of solo merit and strict honesty. You are all comrades in the trenches, but you are also rivals for a finite amount of the teacher's esteem and a finite number of passing exam grades. This tension births a constant, low-grade espionage. You see it in the way eyes flicker during the oral exam. When Park faltered, you weren't the only one who knew the line. The boy next to him, you, had his lips poised to form the silent shape of the missing character, a breath away from a treacherous, life-saving whisper. He stopped himself, but the impulse was there, a fracture in the classroom's law of every man for himself. Later, during calligraphy, you witness a more blatant act. Minute, the merchant's son, whose brushwork is perpetually shaky, subtly angles his paper toward the student beside him, a boy named Jin known for his elegant strokes. A quick, glancing study, a desperate attempt to copy the angle of a hook. Jin notices. He hesitates, then deliberately shifts his own paper away, blocking the view. His face is blank. This is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. In the harsh economy of the classroom, giving away skill devalues your own. Then there is the cheat. The most common, desperate tool, the jagyong, a miniature text. A student, often one from the back, with less to lose, will copy a difficult passage in tiny, cramped characters onto a slip of paper or even the inside of his sleeve. During a written quiz or a moment of recitation panic, a furtive glance downward can offer salvation. The risk is astronomical. Getting caught isn't just a caning, it's a profound, unrecoverable loss of face, a permanent stain on your character that could get you expelled and blacklist your family. Yet, the terror of the rod and the shame of public failure drives the gamble. Historians still argue whether the sheer prevalence of such cheating was a damning indictment of the pressure cooker system or a natural, even admirable, display of human ingenuity in the face of impossible demands. You yourself are not above this shadow system. Just last week, during a brutal review of the Book of Rites, you formed a pact with the boy across from you, Han. He has a photographic memory for text but struggles with meaning. You are the opposite. During a break, behind the woodshed where the firewood is stacked, you engaged in a whispered, frantic barter. Explain the 3 rituals for welcoming a state dignitary, he pleaded. In return, I'll give you the exact phrasing for the 5 morning grades. It was a transaction of pure need. No friendship, just a tactical exchange of intellectual currency. You both benefited. It felt like a victory, but also a dirty secret, a betrayal of the ideal that you should stand alone on your own merit. But the most corrosive element is the tattler. Every class has one. In yours, it's a pinched-faced boy named Bak, who sits near the front but not at the front, consumed by a bitter ambition. He is the teacher's shadow, his ears pricked for the faintest rustle of disobedience or error he did not commit. He is the one who noticed that young Kim had hidden a scrap of notes in his belt during a review. He didn't report it immediately. He let Kim sweat through the session, then calmly mentioned it to the senior student after class. The resulting punishment was severe. Bak received no overt reward, but the teacher's gaze rested on him a moment longer the next day, with a hint of approval. He traded a classmate's flesh for a sliver of favor. This is the dark logic of the ecosystem. In a world of scarce rewards, another's fall can be your rise. Some contemporary commentators noted that the most vicious tattlers were often the sons of minor clerks or failed scholars, boys who had internalized their family's precarious social standing and saw betrayal as the only ladder available to them. This covert world exists because the official world offers no mercy. The teacher's system is binary, success or failure, with pain as the corrective. The students, in response, have built their own grey market economy of aid and sabotage. You navigate it daily, a tightrope walk of cautious alliances and strategic silences. You lock eyes with Han across the room now, during a lull. A tiny, almost imperceptible nod passes between you, a reaffirmation of your clandestine pact. Then you quickly look away, lest Bak's ever-watchful eyes catch the exchange and file it away as future leverage. The lesson here is grimly practical. The Seodang is not just preparing you for the exam hall, it's preparing you for the bureaucratic court. It's teaching you to read a room, to identify allies and enemies, to know when to shower secret and when to bury it, and to understand that sometimes the most dangerous person is not the one with the rod, but the one whispering in his ear. The teacher's final lecture on poetic meter fades, and he closes his book with an air not of conclusion but of transition. The mental rigors of the day are not over. They are merely changing form. The body houses the will, he intones a standard prelude. A weak vessel cannot carry a strong spirit to its destination. With that, you are dismissed from the hall not to rest but to move. The afternoon sun, now lower and warmer, bathes the courtyard as you file out for the physical component of your education, martial training. This isn't about becoming a warrior. Warriors were of a lower class. This is about Yi, ritualized discipline for the body, and Mu, the martial principle, as one of the necessary arts for a complete leader. You shed your outer scholarly robe, down to your white inner garments and loose trousers. The feeling of the cool air on your arms is a shock, a physical liberation from the restrictive cloth of study. In a cleared area of the packed earth courtyard, the archery butts are set up, straw targets mounted on wooden frames. This is gungsul archery, the most noble of the physical arts for a scholar. A young man might never draw a sword in anger, but he was expected to be proficient with the bow, a weapon of ritual, hunt, and distant, precise defense. The senior student, now acting as drill master, hands you a bow. It's not the massive war bow of the military, but a lighter, elegant composite bow made of bamboo, horn, and sinew, reflexed into a graceful C shape when unstrung. It feels alive in your hands, taut with potential energy. The lesson begins not with shooting but with posture. Feet shoulder width apart, body turned sideways, back straight. You nock an arrow, a slender reed fletched with hawk feathers. Drawing the bow is a full body engagement. You raise it, pull the string back past your ear, your left arm extending, your right anchor point firm against your cheek. The strain is immediate in your shoulder and back muscles, and used to such deliberate tension. You are taught to hold, to find a point of stillness amidst the strain, to align your sight along the arrow's shaft. The mind must be as straight as the arrow's path, the senior student says, echoing the teacher's earlier words. Anger, fear, distraction, they all curve the shot. You release. The string snaps forward with a deep thrum, and the arrow flies, wobbling in its flight before thudding into the dirt mound well short of the target. It's humiliating. Your mind, so disciplined for characters, is useless here. Your body must learn a new language. Historians still argue whether this physical training was genuinely meant to produce capable scholar officials who could oversee military matters, or if it was mostly symbolic pageantry, a way to connect the literate elite to a more ancient, martial Korean identity. The mainstream fact is that archery was a key part of the state examinations until the late Joseon period. A high-ranking official needed to demonstrate this balance of civil and martial virtue, the Munmu ideal. After archery comes basic Sirium Korean wrestling. This is less about combat and more about balance, leverage, and grounding. You pair off. You and Han, your study partner in crime, face each other. You grip each other's cloth sash belts. The goal is to off-balance and throw your opponent. It's a clumsy, grunting affair of tangled limbs and sudden, dusty falls. There's a sheer animal physicality to it that is utterly foreign after the silent, seated hours of study. For a few minutes, you are not a mind reciting classics. You are a body trying not to be slammed into the dirt. You taste dust. You feel the solid heat of another person struggling against you. It's exhausting and in a strange way cleansing. Some archery masters insisted that the best focus came from imagining your spirit flowing down your arm, through the bow, and into the arrow, becoming one with its flight. A physical act of meditation that strangely mirrors the mental focus of calligraphy. The session is not long, perhaps an hour, but it leaves you panting, sweat tracing paths through the dust on your skin. Your muscles, which ached from sitting, now burn with a different, more honest fatigue. As you pull your scholarly robe back on over your damp underclothes, the fabric feels alien, a costume you are donning again after a brief escape. The message is internalized through your trembling limbs. The mind you are so meticulously crafting is not a separate entity. It is the captain of this physical ship. If the ship is weak, leaks, or is clumsy, the captain's brilliant navigational charts are worthless. The disciplined body is the literal platform from which the disciplined mind can project its will onto the world. The teacher watches from the porch, his expression unreadable. He sees not boys playing, but future magistrates who might need to inspire troops, endure long journeys, or simply project an aura of unshakable embodied authority. The sting of the bamboo rod corrected the mind. The burn in your shoulders is meant to fortify the vessel that carries it. The journey home, you realize, will be made on legs that are newly heavy, carrying a new kind of weariness into the evening's final silent trials. The cool evening air seeps into your bones as you trudge back from the training yard, the dusty, physical echo of the day clinging to your skin. But a deeper, colder weight settles upon you as you cross the threshold back into the scholastic quiet of the dormitory. It's a weight not of muscle fatigue, but of lineage. The fading light doesn't just signal the end of the day. It seems to summon ghosts, the silent, watching ghosts of your ancestors. You are not here for yourself. You are a vessel, a single point of focus for the hopes, fears, and precarious honor of your entire family line. You think of your father, not the warm, private memory of a man, but his social avatar, a minor young man perhaps, or a scholar who never quite passed the higher exams. His life is one of genteel struggle, of maintaining appearances on a shrinking plot of land, of deferring to more successful relatives at clan gatherings. In you, he sees a reset button. Your success in the exams wouldn't just be a personal achievement, it would be a family promotion. It would mean a government post, a stipend of land, legal immunity from certain taxes and corvée labor. It would lift your parents out of anxiety, make your sisters more marriageable, and secure your future children's place in the young band class. Your failure, conversely, would be a familial catastrophe. It would confirm a decline. The whispers at those clan gatherings would grow louder. That branch is spent. The talent has run out. Your father might have to sell more land, slide further into irrelevance. This is why the tuition, the modest gifts to the teacher, are scraped together from household funds that could have bought a new roof or a cow. It's an investment, the riskiest one your family will ever make. When you bowed to the teacher this morning, you were bowing with your father's back. When you flinched under the threat of the rod, you were flinching for your mother's pride. The pressure is an heirloom, passed down more burdensome than any land deed. Historians still argue whether this intense familial pressure was the essential engine that drove the meritocratic aspects of the exam system, or a toxic, crushing force that personalized state ambition and turned children into instruments of dynastic strategy. You open your wooden chest to fetch a clean underrobe. Inside, folded atop your few possessions, is a letter from home, delivered by a cousin last market day. You've read it a dozen times. The formal, brush-stroked phrases from your father are all surface. Study diligently. Respect your teacher. Uphold our name. But between the lines, you feel the desperate, silent scream of his hopes. Your mother added a postscript in the simpler Hangul script, which women used, I pray for your health. Eat well. It's a poignant, impossible request, given the barley and Kim Kai, and it almost breaks you. They have sent a small pouch of roasted chestnuts with the letter. A luxury. You haven't eaten them. They sit there, a tiny, edible monument to their sacrifice. Some sons, upon repeatedly failing the exams, would deliberately disappear, faking death or running away, to release their families from the shame and financial drain of their continued study, a final, desperate act of filial piety through absence. You look around the dim dormitory at the other boys, all performing their own evening rituals. Minute, the merchant's son, polishes a fine brass water dropper his father gave him. The senior student writes a weekly letter home, no doubt reporting progress. Young Kim, his spirit still bruised from the morning, simply stares at his hands. Each of you is a needle on a gauge measuring your family's future pressure. The mainstream fact is that the Joseon dynasty's entire social stability was predicated on this, the Yangban class renewing itself through examination success. It was a system designed to create an eternal, anxious striving, tying the fate of the kingdom directly to the performance of boys in rooms like this one. You close the chest, the letters invisible words pressing on your eyelids. The calligraphy practice, the recitation, the fear of the rod, these were immediate terrors. This is an eternal one. It doesn't fade with the sunset. It grows in the quiet. Tonight, when you try to sleep, you won't just be reciting texts for tomorrow's review. You'll be reciting your father's unspoken expectations, your mother's silent prayers. You are their sole conduit to honor, their bulwark against obscurity. The weight is suffocating, but it is also the fuel. It is the reason you will force your eyes open in the dark before dawn when every muscle begs for rest. It is the reason you will endure the bamboo, the hunger, the loneliness. You are not just studying to become an official. You are studying to become a savior. And the terrifying thought, the one that whispers in the deepest part of the night, is this: what if, after all this, you are simply not good enough? The evening study period is a quiet, desperate hum. The soft scratch of brushes on paper, the occasional, stifled sigh, the rustle of a page being turned, these are the sounds of a room full of ghosts. Not ancestral ghosts this time, but the ghost of a future so monumental and terrifying it haunts the present. This is the specter of the Guagio, the civil service examination. It is not a single event. It is a decade-long shadow that falls across your life the moment you enter the Seodang, growing longer and darker with each passing year. You are not studying for a test next week. You are in training for a multi-stage decathlon of the mind that will occur years from now. The first hurdle, the Sengwon, classics, or Jinsa, literature, exams, might be a few years off. They are merely qualifying rounds, held in your provincial capital. But your teacher's entire curriculum is a blueprint for them. The thunderous recitation? That's to ensure you can quote any classic, anytime. The brutal calligraphy? Your essays must be visually flawless. The mathematical and poetic analysis? All part of the papers. The mainstream historical fact is both inspiring and soul-crushing. The highest exam, the Mongwa in the capital, had a pass rate often below 5%. For every boy in this room dreaming of glory, statistics dictate that 19 will face a lifetime of quiet, or not so quiet, despair. Your teacher sometimes breaks from the daily text to describe the exam hall itself. It's not to motivate, but to inoculate. He speaks of the vast, walled compound, the thousands of individual examination cells, tiny, roofed cubicles just big enough for a man, a desk, and a chamber pot. You will be locked in for days. Guards will patrol to prevent cheating. You will write until your hand cramps, sleep fitfully on the floor, eat cold rice brought to your cell. The exam is not just intellectual, it is an ordeal of endurance, a ritualized suffering meant to weed out the physically or mentally weak. Some candidates were said to have died in their cells from stress, illness, or sheer exhaustion. Their bodies would be quietly removed at night so as not to disturb the other test takers. The examination was a machine, and human frailty was an acceptable loss. This future specter warps your present reality. Every successful recitation is not just a victory over the rod, It's a brick in the wall of your future examination cell. Every mistake is not just a sting on the calf, it's a crack in that wall. The senior student, so confident here, will one day sit in a cubicle next to a genius from Seoul he's never met. Min's father's money can buy extra tutoring, but it cannot bend the examiner's anonymous grading. Your clandestine study pact with Han is a survival tactic for a future battlefield. Historians still argue whether this exam system, for all its brutality and low odds, was a revolutionary force for meritocratic social mobility or merely a sophisticated tool for the elite to regulate and renew themselves, creating just enough hope to maintain the system's stability. You look at the text before you, a passage from the book of history. It's about the virtues of a wise minister. You are not just learning it, you are reverse engineering it. How would an examiner frame a question on this? What subtle interpretation could distinguish a good answer from a great one? The teacher's harshness now seems like a mercy. He is simulating the impartial, ruthless judgment of the state. The bamboo rod is a physical proxy for the red ink of a failing grade. The fear in this room is a low-grade vaccine against the absolute terror you will feel when the heavy wooden door of your exam cell swings shut. This ghost affects everything. It dictates the subjects you learn, only what's on the exam. It dictates the style you write in, formal, orthodox, impeccably referenced. It even dictates the friends you keep, allies in a long war. The boy who tattles back isn't just seeking teachers' favor, he's trying to eliminate rivals in a zero-sum game where only a few can pass. The weight of your family's name, which you felt so acutely earlier, is just one component of this larger, crushing atmospheric pressure. The exam is the judge that will validate or annihilate their sacrifice. You put down your brush, your fingers aching. The lantern light flickers, making the shadows of the other students leap and twist on the walls like anxious spirits. In a few years, this shared life will shatter. You will all disperse to different exam sites. Some will pass and become a new class of person, distant and respected. Most will fail, returning to their villages diminished, to become teachers like yours, or farmers, or bitter ghosts haunting the local taverns, talking of what might have been. The ghost of exam's future whispers one clear message. This, all of this, the cold, the hunger, the pain, the loneliness, is merely the preface. The real story hasn't even begun. And for most of you, it will be a tragedy. A final, resonating clack echoes through the hall as the teacher seals his inkstone. It is the day's official period. The signal is not shouted, but absorbed. A collective, weary muscle relaxes, though no one slumps. The ritual of closure begins, mirroring the ritual of dawn. You carefully cap your own water dropper, wipe your brush clean on a rag until it forms a perfect, sharp point, and place it in its stand. You align your books and papers into a neat stack. Every action is slow, deliberate, a winding down of the intense mental clock that has been ticking since before sunrise. The room, which hummed with silent concentration moments ago, now breathes a sigh of spent energy. You rise with the others, your joints protesting, knees stiff from sitting, shoulders sore from archery, a low throb of fatigue in your temples from hours of focus. You form a line, less rigid than the morning's, but still ordered. The teacher stands before his desk. You bow, a final, formal gesture of the day, less profound than the morning prostration but no less necessary. It is an acknowledgement of services rendered and received, a closing of the contract. He returns a slight nod. The transaction is complete. He turns and disappears into his private quarters, the weight of his responsibility lifting from the room, leaving behind only the weight of your exhaustion. Back in the dormitory, the atmosphere changes. The formal silence is allowed to crack, but it doesn't shatter into noise. Soft, hushed conversations bubble up, comments on the day's hardest passage, a muttered complaint about the stiffness of a new bow, a whispered question about a character's meaning. It's the sound of decompression. You perform your ablutions at the stone basin in the corner, the cold water shocking the grit from your face. You change into sleeping clothes, the simple, white sock got. The coarse scholarly robe, your uniform and armor, is hung carefully on a peg. For a few hours, you are permitted to be just a body, not a vessel for the state. You unroll your thin sleeping mat on the ondel floor, which has begun to receive faint, welcome warmth from the kitchen fire stoked below. This is the promised comfort, the single physical mercy of the day. You lie down, the heat seeping into your aching muscles. The room darkens as the last lamp is extinguished. Darkness, blessed and total, envelops you. Your body screams for sleep. But your mind, trained like a racing hound, will not be so easily kennelled. This is the hidden, most personal hour of study. The mind churn. With your eyes closed, you begin to review. Not actively, but passively, compulsively. The passages from the morning's chant scroll through your memory unbidden. You test yourself. Can you recite the next 10 lines without a pause? You can, but your internal voice falters on the 12th. You focus on it, repeating it silently until it locks in. Then you move to the calligraphy. In the black behind your eyelids, you visualize the character. You trace its strokes with your mind's finger, critiquing the weight of your horizontal line, the sharpness of your hook. You run through the geometry problem from the afternoon, rearranging imaginary counting rods. Historians still argue whether this obsessive, involuntary review was a sign of a successfully disciplined mind or a symptom of what we'd now call burnout or anxiety, the brain unable to disengage from its relentless taskmaster. Some students reported text dreams, where they would argue with Confucius in their sleep or find themselves trapped in a giant book where the characters were walls. Your own mind now feels like such a book, its pages rustling in a wind you cannot control. You hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of the boy next to you, already asleep. A pang of jealousy. How does he turn it off? You think of young Kim, and hope his sleep is deep, untroubled by the memory of the rod. You think of the senior student, probably already dreaming of the capital exams. The ghost of your family's expectations whispers once more. The specter of the future exam cell looms. You turn on your side, seeking a cooler spot on the mat. The faint, woody scent of the ondel smoke mixes with the smell of old paper and boy sweat. You try to empty your mind, to think of nothing, to find the void. But the words are there. They have become the fabric of your consciousness. The day may have closed its official ledger, but the mind's private audit continues in the dark. The final lesson of the Joseon Schoolroom is that education is not an activity with a start and stop. It is a state of being. It is a relentless, inner dialogue between the self you are and the superior man you are required to become, a dialogue that continues long after the teacher has left the room, long after the lights go out, following you into the vulnerable quiet of night, where the only thing left to discipline is your own, untamed thoughts. The pre-dawn bell sounds. It is identical to yesterday's bell. It will be identical to tomorrow's. As you stare in the lingering dark, the cold already seeping through the thin mat, there is no fresh beginning, only a continuation. You perform the same motions, the precise fold of the bedding, the splash of icy water, the fumbling into the coarse blue robe. You take your place in the same line, bow to the same tablet, chant the same passages with the same thunderous, mind-numbing repetition. The bamboo rod rests in its same place. The inkstone awaits its same circular grind. This is not a new day. It is the same day, relived. And this, you now understand with a clarity that settles deep in your bones, is the entire point. The Seodang is not a school in the sense of progressing through grades toward an exit. It is a crucible. Its purpose is not to fill you with information, but to subject you to a process, a relentless, cyclical alchemy meant to break down the soft, idiosyncratic ore of your childish self and recast it in the iron mold of the Confucian gentleman, the Xianbi. The routines are the fire. The texts are the mold. The punishments are the hammer blows. You are not being educated, you are being remade. Season after season, you watch the maple in the courtyard blaze red, shed its leaves, stand bare, and green again. Inside, the cycle is unchanging. The texts get longer, the calligraphy more complex, the mathematical problems more intricate, but the fundamental rhythm, discipline, memorization, examination, correction, is a wheel that turns without advancing. You see the results in the older students. The playful light in their eyes, if it was ever there, is gone, replaced by a focused, weary solemnity. Their movements are economical, their speech precise. They have internalized the geometry. Their anger doesn't flare, it simmers as cold disdain. Their joy doesn't erupt, it manifests as a faint, approving nod at a well-toned phrase. They have become walking manifestations of the rituals they endured. This is the goal, a human being whose every impulse, from the stroke of a brush to the tone of a greeting, is prescripted by sage wisdom. A man who is no longer a messy individual, but a perfect, functional component in the great machinery of the state. Historians still argue whether this system ultimately produced nobly self-sacrificing guardians of the public good or merely rigid, risk-averse bureaucrats incapable of innovation in the face of crisis. Some scholars debated whether true mastery came from forgetting the rituals after learning them, so they sprang from genuine virtue rather than conscious obedience, a state few, if any, ever claimed to reach. You are years from that paradox. You are still in the stage of brutal, conscious imprinting. The mainstream fact is that this process was designed to take a decade or more. It was a long-term investment in human capital, betting that time, pressure, and repetition could standardize something as wildly variable as the human spirit. You think of your future not as a path leading away from here, but as a larger version of this room. Passing the exams means entering the government school or a bureaucratic office, where a new set of rituals and hierarchies awaits. Failing means returning to your village, where you will be expected to behave as a scholar anyway, upholding the rituals in miniature. There is no true escape from the mold. The crucible's work is permanent. Either you are forged into a tool that fits the system's hand, or you are discarded as slag. The dream of finishing your education is an illusion. The Seodang is not a preparatory school for life. It is life, in its most concentrated, ideological form. Every day here is a lifetime of obedience, focus, and pressure, condensed and repeated until its pattern becomes your nature. As you grind your ink in the morning light, the shush-shush rhythm of familiar mantra, you feel a strange, quiet resignation mixed with a sliver of grim pride. The cold, the hunger, the fear, the endless repetition, they are not hardships to be overcome. They are the ingredients of the person you are being built to be. The weight of your family's name and the specter of the exams are not burdens, but the necessary gravity holding this tiny, simulated universe together. You are living a lifetime in a single, recycled day, and with each identical dawn, the boy you once were fades, and the scholar you must become is etched a little deeper, until one day, you will look in the brass bowl of washing water and see not a child's face, but the calm, inscrutable, finished mask of a Xianbi, ready to take his place in the endless, unchanging cycle of the dynasty itself. The wooden hall is quiet now, the last echoes of the day's chants absorbed by the papered walls and the high, dark beams. Imagine the scent, not gone, but settled. The pine ink, the faint, clean sweat of disciplined effort, the ghost of barley and kim kai, the dry, ancient perfume of paper and wood. It's a smell of work done, of a world held in careful, deliberate order. The mats are empty, the brushes stand at attention in their rests, the teacher's rod lies dormant, just a piece of bamboo in the stillness. That immense, crushing pressure you felt, let it dissipate now. It was a story, a journey into a mindset far removed from our own world of flickering screens and constant choice. Those boys, with their burdens and their desperate hopes, are long, long gone, their struggles turned to dust, their successes etched only in forgotten records. But for a moment, we shared the weight of their world, felt the grain of the paper under their fingers, the strain in their young shoulders. It was a harsh world, rigid and demanding, but within its strict confines, there was a kind of terrible clarity, a knowledge of exactly what was expected, of a path, however narrow, to walk. There's a strange peace in that, even amidst the fear. So let that clarity soothe you now. Your world is not so demanding. Your path is your own. The bells that govern their every move are silent. The only rhythm now is your own breathing, slow and deep, easing into rest. Let the image of the quiet, moonlit courtyard, the soft glow of a single lamp behind paper windows, fill your mind. No more chanting. No more rods. Just stillness, and the gentle, forgiving dark, ready to carry you into a dreamless, untroubled sleep, far, far away from the cold dawn of the Seodang.